Welcome along, ladies and gentlemen, to a blusty UK summer's day. We've still got the Tuono. This is my second video on the Tuono. We're going to go in depth into the electronics of this bike in this one. Go through all of the settings, wheelie control, traction control, pit limiter, all of the good stuff. So sit back, relax, get a cup of tea, and let's go. So when I got this bike from Aprilia, they never gave me the manual, which is good, because this means I've got to try and learn how this all works intuitively without reading the book, and I think which is the ultimate test of an electronics package. If you've got to get the book out to see how to do something, then I think it's failed off the bat. You've got to be able to use it, you've got to be able to work it out. Now, I've worked out almost everything. I wouldn't say I'm an absolute expert on this, and I'm sure there's going to be some actual Tuono owners watching this video who are going to go, "You do it like that, Chops, you don't do that." So first of all, as we're in town, let's have a look at the pit limiter. Now, this bike has this bike is a very track focused naked. This bike is obviously based on the RSV4, so which is like the ultimate track day bike, really. I mean, that bike shares so many similarities to the actual Aprilia race bikes. So it's an out and out thoroughbred race bike for the road, that one, and this is based on it. And this has got exactly the same electronics package that the RSV4 has. So you've got things like the pit limiter built in. The whole of the electronics controls all work from this little jog dial on the handlebars. These controls are really tactile, really nice, feel really good quality, but the actual toggle is quite small, and when you've got gloves on, you've got to be a little bit careful with it. That would be my only criticism. So to engage the pit limiter, you've got a separate button on the controls. You have to be in first gear. I've set it for 40. If we now press the pit limiter button, all of the shift lights will flash on the dashboard to let you know you're in pit limiter mode. And if you accelerate, it slightly went over then. It will gradually slow you and keep you at 40. Doesn't matter what you do with the throttle. Obviously you can go slower than 40. What you have to be really careful of is when you turn it off, all of a sudden, if you're holding that throttle quite far open, you'll be off. Literally, you'll go and it will just launch you. So when you come off the pit limiter, close the throttle, disengages it, you can then go over 40 miles an hour. Next thing to look at is the cruise control. You've got a lovely little jog wheel here to turn on the cruise control and to increase and decrease your speed easily. So let us get onto a slightly straighter bit of road. So if you hold the cruise control button down, you'll get the cruise control light flash at you. That just tells you the cruise control is enabled, but it's not yet engaged. To engage it, you've got to be in third gear and above. It won't work in anything below third gear. So get your speed you want to do, hold that dial down, push it down once, the cruise control is now set. Then you can use the up and down jog wheel to increase and decrease your speed on the fly. It's a nice system, it works really well. Press it again to disengage, or of course touch the brakes to disengage. The only thing which is annoying is the flashing green light. It looks like, at the corner of your eye, it looks like you left your indicator on. Hold it down again, disengage it and turn it off. That's cruise control. Keeping up so far. One thing which works incredibly well on this bike is the quick shifter. Any revs, it works amazingly well. First to second even works pretty smoothly. The blipper is even better. You blip it when you've got the revs up. We'll do some examples of this in a minute. Let's go into first. mean, listen to that. It's brilliant. When you're on the boil, when you're going for it, there's no sweeter sound than that blipper going as you're approaching bends and stuff. I said it's been windy, didn't I? Look at it. You don't want that falling on your head. Look at that. Some little birdies have off their houses there. Let's set up an appeal. So yeah, the blipper and the quick shifter, really good. I've been on bikes where they don't work very well. They don't work well on all production bikes, and it even works when the bike's cold. I was a bit reluctant to do the blipper and quick shifter when the bike was stone cold. You think, oh, let's give it a chance to warm up at least. But it's fine. You can even do open throttle downshifts. Let's try one. With the throttle open, bang it down. Whoa, it works, Jesus. I recommend having the anti-wheelie on though if you're going to do that too often. But it works, that's fantastic. Open throttle downshifts. Wow. Wow. So that's the quick shifter and blipper. One of the best systems I've ever used. One thing which really threw me when I was on the test ride on one of these was how to change the engine map mode. The bike I tried was in race mode, and I thought I really want to see what the throttle response like is in a less aggressive mode. So it took me a while to work it out, but to change the map, so we're in sport at the moment, to change the map you actually press the starter button again. It's the last thing I'd think of doing is pressing the starter button again when the bike's running. I just wouldn't think of doing that, because normally on an old-fashioned bike that would engage your starter motor again and cause you all sorts of horrible noises. So pressing the start button again will take you through the different modes. And there's 3 modes on this bike. They've not gone ridiculous with it, but look at them. There's track, sport, or race. There's no wet, there's no road, it's track, sport or race. I don't know which is higher, I don't know which is more aggressive. I guess the track. I don't know which is the more aggressive setting, track or race. Let's get into second and let's see if we can notice any throttle response differences. Yeah, okay. Track mode. Oh yeah, that is definitely more. Jesus, yeah, that's aggressive. It's not. It's the throttle response on this bike is really good. For Euro 4, they've really nailed it on the mapping. Yeah, I wouldn't want to play with that without the anti-wheelie on. We're going to go back to sport, and sport is the softest setting. Sport. This is a bike which, when you ride it, it can scare you. It is not a bike for the faint-hearted, this. It may be a naked, but this is really for experienced riders only, I would say. And without all this electronics on it, like when these first came out, when the RSV4 first came out, there was no such thing as the APRC electronics package. It was just as is, no electronics, and I think that would be a scary prospect. Owning one of those and riding one of those. It is nice to know you've got the safety net of electronics on this bike, and the Aprilia was one of the first to actually have a decent electronics package. I think they added it a year after the bike came out, about 2010. I think they went for the APRC models, could be wrong, but it's been on these bikes a long time, so they've refined it and improved it over the years, and on the 2017 model they've really nailed it. It's really nailed, properly nailed. Oh, get lost, you piece of shit. I hate shitty cameras. Bollocks. Okay, so that's all the little nice to have electronic stuff. The cruise control, the pit limiter. It's nice to have. The ABS, the traction control, the launch control have all got separate settings. You can adjust how much traction control you have. There's 3 options, 1, 2 or 3 setting. You can adjust how much, I don't know, I haven't played with this yet, but also the launch control has 3 settings, I presume for just how insane you are. So I'm going to play with that separately, as I said. and the traction control has 8 settings. The traction control all works, it's all adjusted by these little paddles on the left hand grip, so if you're on track, if you're concentrating, you want a bit more traction, you can just touch, you don't even have to look where they are, they're just there at your fingertips. It's a really nice, well thought out system, and it'll adjust between 8 ranges. So at the moment I've got traction control level 3. I mean, look at this road, there's all sorts of things in this road. If I take it up by pressing the plus button to traction level 8, we may see a little bit of intervention. There we go. If I'm in second gear and give it a handful, it's actually intervening, it's making it adjusts. First of all, it retards the ignition slightly. If that still isn't having the desired effect, it will block fuel, it will start stopping fuel from the injectors. So there's 2 ways it's controlling the bike. It's also, of course, got the IMU, so the traction control is also lean sensitive. So if it knows when the bike is leaning on its side, it knows to work differently in that situation, and it will actually let you slide the back out with the slide control to a degree. I'm not going to test this down here. If I had a track day on this, I'd give that a go, but it's all there. It's meant to work really well. It's new for this year. That's a new feature, the slide control, and that's all working via the traction control, not a separate system. So that's level 8. So if you're out in the rain, it's a bit shitty, the roads like it is today, it's no bad thing to have that additional level of traction there. We've got another tree down the middle of the road. Jesus, what a day to come out and do a video. Now the anti-wheelie I've been a little bit disappointed with. I've ended up turning it off because I like a bit of a wheelie. I like to wheelie a little bit, and the system, even though it's got 3 settings, it's really intrusive on every single setting. On the MT10, for example, on its lowest wheelie control setting, you can actually get the bike to wheelie sort of a good 2 or 3 feet off the ground, no problem. With this, even on the lowest setting, it will shut down your wheelie straight away. More than a couple of inches, it will shut you down. You've got to be really good with your throttle response. If you're ham-fisted, do not get one of these bikes, full stop. This is a bike for an experienced rider. This isn't a newbie bike, not at all. Experienced riders only, please. With the anti-wheelie off, if you give it full throttle in second gear, it will flip. I'm not talking about giving it a handful, I'm just talking about riding normally. If you open the throttle in second, it will wheelie as the power comes in. You don't have to like get on the power and pull it back at the maximum. It will just wheelie. It will wheelie and it will flip. So just bear that in mind with having it off. So that's the anti-wheelie, that's the traction control. The ABS again has 3 different settings. I have it, mine's on settings, ABS is on setting 2. At setting 2 I've had no whisper of any intervention, it's been fine, it's not been coming on at all. You can also turn it off as well if you want to, so if you're on track and you are finding it a bit intrusive, there is an option there to turn it off, but on the road, even level 2, I've not had it coming on. Also it's lean sensitive again, like the traction control, so when the bike's pitched right over and you go for the brake, it knows the bike's over, so it knows how to adjust for the level the bike's leaning at. It knows that if you're on the side and you put a handful of front brake on, you do not want any lock of that front wheel. It's got to be smooth. So that's the main key areas of electronics. All of them extremely good, apart from my few niggles related to the anti-wheelie. The TFT screen also has a host of features. Now you can't change the way it looks like you can on some of the other bikes like the Street Triple or the Blade. You can go in and change the colours and the layouts. You can't do that, it's a fixed layout, but it's It's nice and easy to read. Some of the stuff, there's a lot of detail on it. Some of it is quite small and it's quite hard to read. That would be one of my only criticisms of it. You have lean angle display, which it's impossible. I don't know if you can hear, it's impossible to look at that while you're riding, impossible. For this bike you can also get an app. Now it's an option, the app integration on the factory. It's a £250 option. On the RSV4 RF it's included, so I'm going to go into detail of how the app works when I get the RSV4 next week. So this bike doesn't have it, I've checked. It has none of the Bluetooth features. But if you did have that, you can record data like lean angle. It also displays brake and throttle pressure indicators showing how much throttle you're giving, how much brake you're giving, which again you can record it in your data on the app. So if you're on track, you can come back and say, well look, you're only actually braking at half throttle at the end of the main straight. So braking at half throttle, I mean braking at half power on the main straight, so you can brake harder. So you can look at that sort of data and think, hang on, yeah, I need to give it more brakes there. Look at the throttle, yeah, I'm only feathering the throttle, I really need to be harder on the throttle out of that turn. Do you know what I mean? You can see how that becomes useful very quickly. One thing this is missing on the dash, which I'm surprised it hasn't got, it's a major cock up for want of a better word. It's got no fuel gauge. This bike is supposed to be a naked road bike, and it's got all the bells and whistles, but it's got no fuel gauge. Where's my fuel gauge, Aprilia? It's got average miles per gallon, it's got actual miles per gallon. It will tell you what your miles per gallon is, but it won't tell you how much fuel you've got left. It's just got the old-fashioned sports bike light, that your lights come on. So yeah, a bit disappointing. No fuel gauge. Oh, that blipper! So good. The handling of this is also absolutely phenomenal. Brakes are just amazing. The power in that front brake is really incredible. So anyway, that's enough of that. So I'll get myself into trouble. Thanks for watching. I hope it's been beneficial, a little overview of the fantastic electronics that this bike has. There's still more videos to come, of course. We've got a long ride. We went for a massive ride the other day down to Weymouth from Portsmouth. That's to come. How is it on the long trip? And don't forget, we've also got the launch control video, where I put my utmost faith in those Aprilia engineers. Basically, for launch control, you hold the two toggles down, you put the bike in first gear, you hold the throttle wide open, and it will sit about 10,000 RPM, and then you let the clutch out and you pray. So stay tuned for when I try and kill myself.